view what she said to that, because if I've those rare times you would think of, man, what would happen if the U.S. went under a dictatorship? It would have to be this conglomerate of people like a, a Bill Gates mind, a Steve Jobs mind, and all these conspiring for evil and stuff like that. Not some half-witted knucklehead and his crew. So I think it's a lot to what she said, Neil.
Yeah, I think when she talks about nepotism, and when we just think of how it is, infiltrated throughout our entire country, it's nepotism is why Donald Trump is president, because of his daddy. Because
Mm,
his daddy affording him to fail multiple times,
yeah.
to be racist on a high level, and for him to take it to another level. And just that word nepotism, I mean, it's not just him. It's like even in the Black community, sometimes people, nepotism happens and it destroys a lot of things, or a lot of things are not taken to the next level because of the passing of the baton is not always for the family member. Sometimes you have to have a corporation and have people inside of it that are qualified to run it, instead of always choosing your family members who a lot of the times are just not qualified to do the job. Talking about Trump, we see that he's talking about having his son Barron be a high level member of TikTok. I mean, and so it's just that word nepotism, it could go so many ways. And Donald Trump is just an example of bad nepotism.
Well, well, before we get into this next thing, before we're gonna get into the homecoming situation, but I want to get into something else. When you're speaking of Donald Trump, but before we do that, let's bring in the one and only Lauren Burke to join us to talk about this Black Virginia News. Black Virginia.
Good morning,
Lauren,
Lauren.
How you doing? How are you? How's it
Good to
going?
see you.
good.
Hey.
Lauren, we're going to talk about, among other things, the shootings near Howard University. And I wanted to be clear, it was near. It wasn't had nothing to do with the homecoming, and of course Lincoln University and what happened there. But I
Right.
wanted to mention this. I saw this over the weekend. I was looking at Steve Bannon lay out their plan for a Trump third term, how they would go about doing it. We already know that he has the Supreme Court in his back pocket. It'll be a 5-4 or 6-3 vote in his favor, one or the other, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the Constitution is unambiguous, right?
right.
You can't run for a third term. Now, it also says that the third term, you really can't run as a vice president for the third term.
Right.
However, the
Hmm.
language, Steve Bannon points out, is not nearly as strong, and the argument is that it was necessary at that particular time, and so they're going to argue that if necessary before the Supreme Court. This is why I say the Supreme Court is going to rule in his favor. But the plan, apparently, according to Steve Bannon and Donald Trump, if you listened to him last week, the plan is to have JD Vance run in 2028, and then Trump replaces him after the swearing in, immediately after the swearing in. Diabolical, Lauren.
Yeah, I think that's all fantasy land. I think the only reason they're talking about it is to try to get it into everybody's imagination. But it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And given his approval rating, which is like historic lows, by the time we get to 3 years from now, I'm sure it'll be even worse. And voters will be set to want to throw him out of office. So it assumes that JD Vance would win the election, which is a huge assumption. It
Hmm.
assumes that Trump could win a third term if he ran, another huge assumption. Remembering that the situation in 2024 was odd. You had to
Hmm.
replace the Democratic nominee, 107
99
days
days.
before an election, which has never happened before in American history. And then you replace that nominee with a female candidate, which is a harder road to toe than a male candidate. Because what we have learned in the last three cycles is that a white male challenging a white male is an easier win than a white male versus a white woman or a black woman. So that was a hard lesson, I think, for the Democratic Party to learn. But the point is, Steve Bannon is just talking
Yeah,
because
but
you.
Lauren, let's look
Mhm,
at this too, though. They are
mhm.
rigging. They are rigging the electoral system.
Of
But
course they are.
I think that's part of the issue, that they have multiple ways, or they're thinking of multiple strategies to overthrow the government. You know, you just brought up one scenario, but you know, there might be martial law, and we might not even get to the midterms before we even get to 3 years from now. So that, you know, look at what's happening with redistricting. And so I think they are planning multiple ways to figure
Mhm.
out how to overthrow and for him to stay in office.
Yeah, they're planning, but whether or not they win in court, it comes down to that, which I
Right.
think it's underreported because, of course, the right is taking over the media. I don't know if you guys
Right.
saw the interview on CBS with leader Hakeem Jeffries with Margaret Brennan, but that was another Margaret Brennan that we've never seen before. That was right wing Margaret Brennan. I don't know what was going
Yeah.
on there, but they're taking over the media for a reason, to bury all of these things that are happening if they
Mhm.
try to execute them, which they probably will, but
And
they still
CNN
have.
was ordered, Lauren, not to, the chief of CNN ordered them not to show anything more about the East Wing being destroyed.
Exactly. That's pretty hard to do. You have too much independent media. You have too many
Right.
photos online. So they're really trying to go against the tide of information. It's hard to go against, but of course they're going to try to do it anyway. That's what the Sinclair takeover was all about. You know, that's obviously what this CNN, Paramount, TikTok thing is about. When you have to start lying and start covering up information to get people to believe a certain thing or think a certain thing, you're in trouble already. They certainly have tried to do that with Middle East policy, and that is failing miserably. You
Yeah,
know, the
absolutely.
information gets out.
Lauren, the shooting near Howard University apparently had nothing to do with homecoming festivities there and did not happen on campus, although a student from another university, another
Right.
HBCU, was injured. However, one person was killed and six more were wounded in a shooting the next night at Lincoln, which is at the International Cultural Center there, where tents and tables were set up for tailgating and socializing after the homecoming football game earlier in that day. Lauren and Niel, it seems that there's a lot going on. Um, this attack against HBCUs. I want to get you guys' thoughts on it.
You know, shootings happen all the time in this country. I don't
Mhm.
know that we go a week without a mass shooting, as a matter of fact. So
A
I'm
couple
not
of
all that
days.
surprised that it would happen where there's a bunch of people in any given setting. And that was kind of my reaction when the thing happened at Howard and at Lincoln. I happened to be at Hampton University and Norfolk State University this weekend for their homecomings, and absolutely nothing happened. But, you know, shooting and guns are a way of life in this country. Guns are as American as apple pie now. We have more guns in the country than people. And this is what happens when you live in a country that has more guns in the country than people, and you're willing to put up with that. And nobody changes anything because the NRA owns actually one entire political party.
Yeah, I'm here in Nevada right now, and we were driving by, and it said guns, and it said learn how to shoot machine guns,
Oh
and I'm
gosh.
like, why would any American need to know how to shoot a machine gun? Why? Why? You know, and to homecoming, I've seen a lot of alumni saying, now homecoming is for the alumni. They're not for the, they were like, they're not for the YNs.
Oh
That's what
gosh.
the elders was saying. Homecoming is not for the young folks. And we, you know, we do like shootings do happen, but we do have a younger generation that we have to be concerned about how they're receiving information and just how they're growing up. It's different generation, different mindset. And so there's a difference when you have the adult alumni and when you have the young students. Two different worlds, and sometimes they do not collide. They collide. Put it that way.
Lauren, is Turning Point infiltrating? Have they been successful at all in infiltrating HBCUs?
Not at any of the HBCUs I've been at. I wish I had known they'd be there on the 24th. I find it odd that they showed up on the Friday at Hampton, and they apparently Virginia State and Hampton, they showed up on the Friday before, which is the biggest day. The biggest day is the day of the football game, which is Saturday. Okay, and the
Right.
parade for Norfolk State. The parade is huge in Norfolk, as it is in a lot of cities with HBCUs. And so if they were too scared to show up on the main day, the pinnacle day of these HB, because in Virginia they actually could have done 4 in 5 days if they planned it right, because Virginia Union was happening as well in the background. But at any rate, I didn't see them. I wasn't looking for them. I walked all around Hampton on Saturday and I didn't see anything that indicated to me. And by the way, had they been there, I'm not sure anybody would have cared. So, or people would have challenged them. I mean, they might think that they're doing something and they take a few photos and make it look like, ooh, we're infiltrating an HBCU. I think that is very hype driven, very hype.
Warren G said Tennessee State ran them away a second time. I think Greer had a video. Was that a video, Greer, that you were going to play? If not, Neil, I tend to think that, and we don't know who the shooters are. I don't know if they arrested anybody yet at Howard or at Lincoln, but I tend to believe that there's some nefarious things behind that. Not just that it was a typical shooting, but that this is organized.
Who knows? In any given city, who knows? Yeah. Could be a party, could be a fight between two people, it got out of hand. It could be anything in this country because we have too many guns. We have too many guns around. And so I'm not sure why we're ever surprised at any mass shooting.
Well, Neil says she saw it's machine guns.
Yeah, I mean it's a gun. It was next to the pawn shop. It said guns. Learn how to shoot machine guns. And I'm like, why? Why are we learning how to shoot machine guns? And I'm like, well, maybe I need to get one. If they get one, let me get one.
That's what so much is predicated on, I mean, that is, my father actually had a Uzi submachine gun. He was a gun nut. He was a cop. And that was the first item that I got rid of and sold. I forget who I sold it. I probably sold it to another law enforcement person after he passed away, because
that's gangster, Lawrence. He's selling weapons to law enforcement. That's pretty gangster.
Yeah, I mean, because you got to get rid of it. You either get rid of it by turning it into the police, and they melt it down or whatever, or you get rid of it by selling it to somebody who is probably someone who's not going to do something stupid with it, and that's probably going to be law enforcement. They just like to go to the range, and people like to go to the range and shoot for whatever reason. I mean, I've gone a few times. I don't find it particularly relaxing. I mean, I'd be around a bunch of guns, and you, of course, have to have the sound gear on, and it's okay. I mean, there is some art to targeting. Obviously, in the Olympics, they do have, marksmanship and all that. But for law enforcement, they have to qualify on their weapon every 6 months. So if you have to qualify on your weapon every 6 months, there's actually a reason to go to the range to practice, because the practice drill, at least on the federal level, is kind of rigorous, actually. So there's a reason for that. But, some people find it relaxing, I guess. I mean, it's interesting.
Or just, to have it for protection. Some people just have it as a form of protection. Right. And it's fine. I just don't think that, just like we need immigration reform, just like we need gun reform, we shouldn't have semi-automatics or weapons that we use in war on American soil. I think that people should be allowed to have guns, but machine guns, AK-47s, those should not be in the hands of American people on American soil.
Yeah, you're watching the collision of commerce versus policy, because it's the gun makers that want to sell more guns.
Right. And the House of Representatives has effectively dissolved. Mike Johnson has surrendered his power, turning over the people's branch of government to chaos and billionaires. The government is shut. And Timothy Mellon, one man, a Trump ally, is paying $130 million to fund the troops because Congress refuses to act. And remember, Johnson is also refusing to swear in newly elected Rep Adelita Gravaldo. I'll never say her name right, but Lauren, you'll help me out with it. Yeah. And who is a Democrat from Texas. So the House doesn't serve the people anymore. It serves the powerful.
Mike Johnson is a puppet of the MAGA right. I don't think he's ever done anything that was something that Donald Trump did not want. I can't think of anything offhand. Um, and they don't want to swear in Miss Grijalva because she, of course, is the vote that will tip the scales for the Epstein files. So they're afraid of that.
Mhm, mhm.
And they don't care about people SNAP benefits running out, and they don't care about health care. So the Republican Party, I really actually don't think this iteration of the Republican Party, an iteration that Barry Goldwater and Ronald Reagan would be shocked by, an iteration that George Will had to flee, doesn't care about anything other than moving our tax money into the bank accounts of their friends. That's the only thing that they are there for that I can see. If you can identify another policy that's going on, they're handing out contracts now to companies that Don Jr. is on the board of. For I mean, are you kidding me? I mean,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
open corruption, and that's all they believe in is moving money to their friends and making their friends richer through our tax money.
Yeah, or having fundraisers at the White House to build ballrooms.
Yeah, support the people that they're moving the money to.
Yeah.
I see no policy for healthcare. I need to see no policy. The other thing they're into too is giving 40 and 50 billion dollars to other country of our tax money, whether it's Argentina, whether it's Israel, whoever it is, right? They love to give our tax money to foreign entities, to foreign countries, and then tell us that they don't have the money to pay for SNAP or the military
Mhm.
benefits and everything else.
And then they get sycophants running around with their talking points about, oh, that money is going to these so-called illegals when they are sending it to illegals.
Yeah.
People in Argentina, people in, like you said, in Israel, people everywhere else except the people here.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and another headline, Mike Johnson just extended Congress members to stay in their districts for another week, and so they won't be back into office until November 2nd, and that's
Well,
the
that's
House of Representatives. Yeah.
See, there you go. And here's something else too. Wells Fargo has agreed to pay $85 million to settle a class action lawsuit against the bank conducted, alleging, I should say, that the bank conducted,
Hmm.
quote, fake interviews with, quote, diverse candidates whom they had no intentions of hiring. The lawsuit was filed by SEB Investment Management, and it said that between February 2021 in June 2022, the bank held the fake interviews to create an appearance of diversity in hiring. And it's like, so they were doing this before Donald Trump. Wells Fargo was doing this before Donald Trump made it easy for them to say no diversity.
Wells Fargo
85
now
million.
has been involved in a series of lawsuits. Wells Fargo keeps coming up in a series of lawsuits. Okay. I mean,
I get
Wells
tracked
Fargo,
with.
Wells Fargo must be the most sued company. I know these big companies do get sued a lot, but this is reminiscent of what happened in the NFL, where they had effectively, okay, we got to, interview the diversity guy, but we're not going to really hire this guy, but we got to interview a black guy under the Rooney Rule, so we'll do it. Then it started to actually work. Okay, that actually started to work, and then we saw a bunch of black coaches come in. But at any rate, it's Wells Fargo's habit of getting sued and losing. By the way, not just getting sued, losing these massive lawsuits is becoming a very interesting pattern.
Right, yeah. They have tons of class action lawsuits to get against them. I've gotten several checks. It might be $10, might be $50, maybe $121, just for whatever reason. But what's interesting is that they always have the money to pay out. You know what I mean? You think
And it's a lot.
it's a lot of money, and they always have it to pay out.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's Wells Fargo has, like you guys have said, immersed in this type of scandal for years, especially when it comes to black folks in banking, more than any other group.
Right.
And it'll be interesting because we know under the Biden administration, just talking about banking at large, how, overdraft fees, he had really
Hmm.
brought those down. And it's interesting to see how the Trump administration is going to begin to re-implement and allow them to gouge people.
And
Yeah,
Lauren,
I mean,
go ahead.
no, I was just going to say they're all about whatever corporate actor has given them money. I mean, the one big winner of this administration is going to be the incarceration crew, Geo
Oh
Group
gosh, she
and
talks about it all the
For
time.
Civic, Geo.
Core Civic. They are going to get billions and already are getting. And this is one of the problems with this paradigm of you have to feed people through the system for that to work. You have to feed people through the system. You have to have human beings whose lives you're ruining to make that profitable. And that is going to be scary to watch. It's going to be very scary to watch.
Oh, it's already done. I mean, Geo and Core Civic have their retreats at Donald Trump golf courses. And so they've been doing this since his first administration, and they are getting all of the accounts. And to your point, each person incarcerated represents $1. You know, how much it costs for the bed, how much it costs to feed them, how much it costs to clothe them. All of those things make the chain gang go round and round. And I think these are the things that the American people, we have to start paying attention to, because we have just talked about for the past 30 minutes a laundry list of things. What happened to Lauren?
Yeah, I have something for.
We've gone through a laundry list of things, but I think it falls back on us, the American people. What are we going to do to stop it? We talked about this before, Stacey, about, remember how we used to have consumer affairs, and
Yes.
the man used to come on local television,
Yes.
and they used to stop the banks from doing this, and they used to stop the telephone companies from doing that. We need to get back to that local activism, to where the people are paying attention and getting involved, because all of these things that we could stop if the people responded more.
Yeah, and Lauren, I have a couple of minutes. I wanted to ask you this. We didn't. I wanted to get your take, I should say, on the whole NBA arrest and betting scandal there.
Well, I'll believe it when I read the case. I mean, I don't believe anything that the government puts forward, particularly if it
This
involves
government, right?
black people and black people who have a lot of money, who are prominent. That makes my antenna go up. So I read the thing. We've seen too many cases where, oh, this big stunning announcement. Brian Benjamin. I would say the Sean Combs case. Same prosecutor, by the way, who's now at a cushy law firm. These big, spectacular announcements do not impress me. What impresses me is evidence in court and people sworn under testimony and seeing the evidence. Because I've been sitting in too many federal courtrooms where there was the big, spectacular announcement. And, it's not just black folks. I remember I was in court for, God, I can't remember the case. It was years ago. It involved a U.S. senator from Alaska, Ted Stevens. And, you get into court and all of a sudden the evidence is not what the announcement was. I mean, so even with this, maybe it's true, maybe it isn't, but we'll see when we get into court.
But here's the thing, too. We hear it's a lot of names, right? But all we hear is Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier, because they're the big names. But
big names,
they've also said that the 5 mafia families, members of the 5 mafia families, some chief mafiosos were arrested too. We don't see or hear their names. We don't see their pictures or anything. That's kind of curious when you make a huge. To me, Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier are afterthoughts when you talk about you just brought down the 5 families.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Michael Francis, who is one of the only living members of a major crime family. He has a whole YouTube channel and books and all that. I'm waiting for him to comment on that. The other living person is Sammy the Bull Gravano. So he's online as well. I kind of wait for those guys to comment on things like that, because they work in
Sammy's crazy.
And they survive that lifestyle, and then they talk about it all the time, what happened. So I'll wait for them to chime in. The RICO era is what really ended, that Rudy Giuliani RICO era of prosecution ended a lot of these crime families, because they started to do these RICO prosecutions so you could get a bunch of people prosecuted at the same time. At any rate, Michael Francis is who I look to. Even though he's a very conservative, he's kind of gotten to MAGA politics for some reason. But to me, the most interesting thing about him, I actually met him on Capitol Hill one day, is that he details what actually happens in the world of organized crime. He doesn't necessarily know any of the current players, but still, he's the one I'll look to on that one.
I know Gilbert Arenas is threatening to sue, but his name is coming up a lot, because remember a few months ago he was arrested, and they're allegedly saying that he was the one that helped open up this Pandora's box. And in response, in response, he's threatening to sue. But remember, he was the first athlete to be arrested and exposed to these secret gambling affairs that were
Right.
happening. So it'll be interesting to see if the dots connect.
Yeah,
Oh.
I don't trust anything that has, not just this Justice Department, any Justice Department. There's
Yeah.
something that goes on in this country that's not talked about enough, which is that when Black people become wealthy and successful, they become a target, and because there are white folks out there that are jealous of that. Okay, I don't know whether you remember Robert Smith got prosecuted out of nowhere for some tax thing. Robert Smith, the billionaire.
Then he bought a house next door to Donald Trump, and everything went away.
Yeah, and I just, when I see things like that, and I see a white prosecutor sitting in the background, I assume that I'm going to have to wait a long time to see the real evidence, because people get jealous of Black people who are successful in this country. It just is a fact. And you see it in a lot of little ways, but this is one of the ways you see it. Prosecution. I mean, when Marilyn Mosby got prosecuted, you see now, of course, Tish James is getting this, oh, now it's mortgage fraud. Suddenly that I have my niece in a house, in a 137 house in Norfolk, Virginia. I mean, some of this is just plain straight up jealousy, because to your point before, when you talk about Nepo babies, it's not supposed to happen. Alexandria Ocasio Cortez is right. It's not supposed to happen that a bartender, sitting in some section of the Bronx, rises to beat an incumbent, a Democrat, Congressman Crowley, who got beat by her in the primary. And now they're talking about her running for president. And it's the same thing with Mamdani. These people are not supposed to happen. And when they do happen, you see a certain group of people get very annoyed. You see that Bill Ackman, the billionaire, is heading up this effort to stop Zoran
Bloomberg.
And speaking of that, stick around for these next two stories, Lauren. Let's jump into this. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries has endorsed Zoran Mamdani for mayor of New York after a long holdout that was being closely watched. So is it on time or a little too late?
Well, his timing is actually consistent with what his timing has been with other endorsements, even though I know a lot of people made a big deal about his endorsement. I've never been a big believer, unless the person's Barack Obama or somebody. I've never been a big believer these endorsements make that much of a difference one way or the other. It's more of a tell on the power of AIPAC and the lobbies behind a lot of these, people whining about, oh my God, Zoran Mamdani might become the mayor of New York. So when you put all that into account, it feels late. He probably should have done it earlier, just because everybody was whining. I mean, if you're going to do it, you might as well just do it whenever. But I don't know that it matters one way or the other. I think he's going to win, barring Curtis Sliwa dropping out, which doesn't look like Curtis Sliwa was going to drop out in the next 9 days. So we'll see what happens.
Stacey,
you don't think any of those billionaires that you were mentioning, and I threw in the name Mike Bloomberg, who also gave $8.5 million to try and defeat Zoran. You don't think that one of them billionaires will get to Curtis beforehand?
They might, but apparently he's in it. There was a story about he might be in it for the matching funds. As a matching fund of $5 million that he raised, that he got, and they're trying, of course, give him more money than that, so that doesn't matter. What I know about New York, I was born in the Bronx, is that the real estate development community is, of course, extremely powerful. And now that we have something at the top of Central Park called Billionaires Row, they've become even more powerful. The last thing they want to hear is somebody talking about freezing rents. I consider myself lucky because I have a family that has a brownstone in Brooklyn that my grandmother bought in the 1950s. So that was just a lucky thing that was then considered, quote, a single family house, which is an incredible thing to think about. But now nobody can buy property in New York unless you're a multimillionaire. It's just as simple as that. So, I'm not sure, the idea that it's radical to talk about affordability, and it's crazy, and you're radical if you're discussing this. I think that Bill Ackman and Michael Bloomberg have the right, just like any other citizen in this country, to affect an election or have an opinion. So Bill Ackman gets to have an opinion just like anybody else, but it is interesting that the biggest whiny crybabies in this moment are all billionaires. I mean, are you really kidding me? I mean, I just think that you know, you don't see that that's a problem, that you whining with $1 billion in assets is, and in his case, a multi-billion dollars. And I actually talked to Bill Ackman the night we were at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, because he's a major donor to the Innocence Project.
Yes.
And I actually was trying to get him to talk, try to mention Justin Fairfax in some way. But the fact that he's a donor to the Innocence Project, a lot of these guys that are billionaires do give money to good things. They do good things. I happen to disagree with him on this, but he does some things that I do say to myself, well, that's good that he's doing that. And same with Michael Bloomberg. He's got some philanthropy out there that he's donated to Black groups and stuff like that and been helpful. But it is amazing to watch. If you know anything about New York, New York is extremely expensive. And to live there is extremely expensive. Yeah. And unless you have some family situation that you just go there for free, you got a problem living there. You're going to be on somebody's couch. Everybody I know that lives there is paying over $3,000 in rent.
And that's California too.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And somebody needs to discuss that. And the fact that Zoran is discussing that, and that's such a big problem for everybody, is just amazing to me. I mean, I'm expecting Ackman. Ackman is a smart guy, and so is Bloomberg. I'm expecting them to say, hey, look, we know there's an affordability problem. We just don't think Zoran's the answer, or some version of that. I don't hear that from Andrew Cuomo. And I'm an Andrew Cuomo fan, but I don't hear him saying it either. Anyway, that's what's up.
Well, let's talk a little bit about redistricting before you go. I mean, we know Texas, California, we're looking at Prop 50 of early voting had started on Saturday. We have North Carolina, we have Indiana. Now it looks like your state, Virginia, has announced that they would begin a redistricting process of their own. Now, House Delegate Speaker Don Scott sent a letter to his colleagues informing them of a special legislative session to discuss redistricting this week. Lauren, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it is good to see the Democrats get real about how to fight and stop bringing a knife to a gunfight, which is what they typically do. But I'm going to go up and see the session. It's at 4:00. I'm at my mother's house in Suffolk, and I'm going to be driving north. So I'm going to stop there on the way back to Nova and see exactly what they're doing. But and over the weekend, I talked to a number of legislators, members of the General Assembly, and this is something that had to happen before the election on November 4th. It's in the, to make a long story short, it's built into the Constitution in Virginia that you have to do redistricting in a certain way. You have to have a preceding election. So they had to do it now to have an election in between them doing the real thing after November 4. So that's why it suddenly has to happen like now that they have.
That was going to be my question too. Why now?
Yeah. So it looks like, oh my God, this is rushed. But what it is there's a provision. They have to do something before that election happens on next Tuesday. Not tomorrow, of course, but Tuesday after on November 4. At any rate, the Republicans are going to go nuts. This is about, by the way, congressional seats and not the state House seats. Just something to know. But the congressional seats, what that comes down to is two Republicans, Jen Kiggins and Rob Whitman. I can assure you that those are the two seats that, which is the first congressional district and the second congressional district in Virginia, and which is the second is Virginia Beach. The first is sort of the middle central part of Virginia, a little headed toward DC, but not quite DC. So anyway, that's going to be a tense discussion. I'm sure the Republicans are going to be unhappy, but everybody's pointing to Texas saying you started it, and now here we are. I mean, this is all about the fact that the Trump and the Republicans are trying to steal the 2026 elections and control the U.S. House. That's what this is about. And also about Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, because that's going to fall. I mean, I don't think anybody thinks that Section 2 is going to be upheld by the Supreme Court. They are going
No.
John Roberts has spent his entire life wanting to kill the Voting Rights Act. Okay. And when they do that, they are going to target all the Black members of Congress in the South and probably eliminate all the Black members of Congress in the South, is what my prediction is. But that's what's going on.
They said it's about 19 seats that the Congressional Black Caucus could lose. I wanted to know about Virginia. You mentioned it, but I just want clarity. Do they have the option to do what Texas did and just, redistricting within the state, or do they have to hold an election like they're doing in California?
I don't think they have to do a ballot initiative. I don't know. I won't know until 4 o'clock
Okay.
today
Okay.
what their exact process is, but I don't think they do. In fact, I've said when Texas happened, I remember talking to a bunch of members of the General Assembly. I said, "Can't you just break the Constitution, change the Constitution in Virginia? You've got a Democratic governor coming in all probability, who I saw yesterday at an event. I mean, Abigail Spanberg is expected to win. You break the Constitution, you change it, and you say, boom, these are the maps, goodbye and good luck." Just like what the Republicans would do. I mean, it's always fascinating to watch the Republicans. When you use their exact tactics, they stomp their feet and scream and everything. The Democrats are using the exact same tactics
Right.
as the Republican Party, and they're acting like some crazy thing is happening. Well, yeah, some crazy thing is happening because you targeted 4 Black members of Congress, basically. I know there's one seat that's open, Texas 18. Texas 18 is the Barbara Jordan seat. But effectively, they're eliminating 4 Black members of Congress in Texas. That's what they did. By the way, white media doesn't want to say this, so let's say it. This is all about targeting Black power.
Right.
I
Of
mean,
course.
yeah, there's some Latino seats, certainly in Texas. But every conversation we're having is leading to the path of eliminating 20 Black members of Congress.
Right.
And that is the story here. Not, oh my gosh, redistricting. And it amazes me
Right.
how white journalists don't want to say that. But this is all
Mhm.
about
And it doesn't it shouldn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat. What you just said is about Black power,
right.
and the thing about it is everyone should be a little unnerved by that at least.
Yeah. And in that term, that's why representation matters. You know what I mean? It's like, that's why, Black women wanted to make sure that we have representation in the Senate. That's why we had a big problem with Gavin Newsom when Kamala Harris left the Senate and was the only Black person. And all we were telling him was that put another Black person in there so Black women have representation. And sometimes I don't think with the even most liberalist white man, they don't get it. They just don't get it. Representation matters. Lauren, you stick around for this next one right here. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has posted on its website, it's official, y'all. Federal food aid will not go out on November 1st. And I mentioned Mike Johnson told his members don't come back until the 2nd.
Mhm.
And so now you have over 40 million people who will not have their EBT distribution happening in the month of November, when it's the biggest celebration that culminates around a dinner meal happen. So what do you guys think? Is this the beginning of the really tightening of what this Trump administration is doing to American people?
Yeah, well, there's a collision of two things. One is the EBT benefits. Also, the healthcare cost is about to really happen because the open
Mhm.
season starts on November 1, and typically people get a notification about what their rates are for the next year, of course, 2026, sometime during November.
Right.
And as one of those people who is now paying $911 a month in healthcare, I will say, because of the Affordable Care Act, I will say that I've always had a theory. I know it sounds a little bit Machiavellian, that really what Republicans want is people to be desperate, so that they have to go to the payday lenders and the title fund, the title loan people, and they need people to be not assisted by the government, because the government is an endless company that is always funded, and you'll never beat and defeat the government, which is why you have people like Russ Vought showing up trying to tear apart the government. The other thing the
Mhm.
government does is it gives people pensions, job security, and health care. And there's something about this iteration of the Republican Party, not the Barry Goldwater iteration, not the Ronald Reagan or George Bush iteration, this one, that likes to dabble in cruelty and force people to be desperate and turn them into the customers of some of their friends that run these predatory companies. I mean, I've got that theory because when I saw Joe Biden give out some checks, when during COVID, we had this once in a generation disease that we were dealing with that killed 1 million people, right? And he does the best he can to help out. And who was complaining about that? The millionaires sitting in the U.S. Senate trying to
Yep.
stop that. Now, what else could explain it than they didn't want people to be able to afford things, and I can't figure out why that is, other than what I just said. So I just
So,
feel like that's the state of play for the Republican Party.
so I did some research on this because
Mhm.
our White House bureau chiefs said, "Can you do a snap story?" And so I did some research, and contrary to the myths that Trump allies and white folks promote, the Americans hit hardest by this crisis. They're not immigrants, they're not black folks, they're not urban
Right.
minorities, but largely white working class families living in rural counties that overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump. Nearly 80% of counties where food stamp use increased over the last decade supported Donald Trump in the elections. Counties with the largest increases were all red counties, Donald Trump red. And 45% of adult SNAP recipients are non Hispanic white people. Black
Mhm.
Americans only account for 27%, while Hispanics make up about 22%. And here's this here's this 0.08 immigrants receive food stamps.
Mhm.
0.08. And this is from the United States Department of Agriculture itself. This is not Pew or anybody else that you might say, I don't trust. This is from Donald Trump's people. No illegal immigrants are getting food stamps.
Right. Yeah.
By the way,
One of
if they
my, go
were
ahead.
if they were getting food stamps, okay, I mean, these are the same people like Charlie Kirk, and what happened to him was terrible and crazy and shouldn't have happened, but they want to quote Jesus and quote the Bible and get on stage with the Bible in their hand and talk about Jesus. And these are the same people cutting aid to the poor as if it's a big game and if it's funny. I mean, that for
Mhm.
me is
Mhm.
odd. I find that odd. They're always wearing their religion on their sleeve, talking about Jesus all the time. All right, so it's a very strange situation, and they've never cared about white poor people. The Republicans, even in the other iteration of the Dixiecrats, they didn't care about white poor people. It was Robert F. Kennedy that went down to the poorest section of the country and saw a bunch of you know white poor people and got shocked and then did care. But I'm saying, this party doesn't care about anything other than moving money to bank accounts. So that's what
That's
it
it.
is.
For sure, for sure. Let's head over to the red dot Target.
Wait, when you said red dime, like, where's she going with this?
It seems like the boycott, is working. But unfortunately, folks are going to lose their jobs now. Target drops news of layoffs before the holidays, cutting at least 1,800 corporate jobs. Now, the retailer confirmed that roughly 1,000 employees will receive layoff notices this week, and 800 open positions will be eliminated.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Target has
Hmm.
left the building. It's just do we don't even talk about Target much anymore. They've become that irrelevant.
Well,
And
hmm.
they
I
did it
think
to
that
themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly the boycott is some of that,
Hmm.
maybe even all of it. But it'll be interesting to see if they can turn that around somehow or gain the trust back of the customers. They probably can, but everybody is in a strange situation. I don't want to totally blame them because part of the pressure, of course, is coming from Donald Trump and his extortion. So the
Hmm.
extortion on these companies has been huge, and it is a difficult and crazy situation.
Yeah, I wish that we can take that talking point though of what Black people did with this Target boycott and turn it into something else. Out of all the issues that we talked about today, we do show that there is people power. And how do we take that and use it to continue to get back our government or whatever this new America that we're creating is going to be? Last story. Definitely want to get your thoughts on this, Lauren. Um,
Laura said you only said 5 minutes.
well,
No, I'm
she's here
kidding.
now. We're almost done. Let's do it all. So the U.S. is ranked near the bottom of the 2025 Global Peace Index, placing us at 128 out of 163 countries. Now, this is behind South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, and this is according to the Institute for Economics and Peace. And so what America looks like on the world stage. We are no longer the dream of all dreams for the world. We are becoming the least liked, the least visited, and now we don't even represent peace anymore.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you've got Black Hawk helicopters landing on the roofs of buildings in Chicago, and you got masked men walking up to women and asking them, are they citizens of the United States? I don't know whether you saw that video. Much like so many others, throwing people down on the ground and all this other stuff. And you have an oligarch system of government that looks a lot like fascism, and a president that says stupid things all the time. What did you think was going to
All
happen?
the time.
So
Right.
at some point, that is going to hit home. Certainly for Canada, we saw a lot of obviously Canadians that come over to the United States. That has slowed down huge. And until Donald Trump is gone, until he's out of office, this is going to continue. So,
Right.
there does have to be some sort of legal strategy. It is very unreported that they're losing in court a lot more than it gets reported. They're losing in
Mhm.
court a lot, but it's not reported as much as it should be. But at any rate, they're winning as well, and unfortunately, this is what it's going to be for at least 3 years, barring some what I would call divine intervention.
Mm, mm.
Wow.
From your mouth
Well,
to God's ears.
Mm.
And I want to get you guys' thoughts on this. China says platforms are giving microphones to anybody, and it's gone too far. So China is proposing new rules that will require influencers to have actual certifications or degrees if they want to give advice on topics like finance, health, law, therapy, or education. Now, the goal is to stop misinformation and unqualified experts. Now, would you guys support something like this in the US when we see all these bloggers and things like that?
mm,
First
I,
Amendment.
go
Yeah.
ahead. Go
No, go
ahead.
ahead, Stacey. I talk. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to simply say that if you're going to, and a lot of people do, unfortunately, go into social media for advice, then you know what? You are a glutton for punishment.
There's a lot of whiny people on. I should have a no whining sign in the background, but online they get mad when they get criticized. Hey, you don't get into the kitchen of this if you can't take the heat, is one of the things. But expertise is definitely lacking in a lot of ways. And I've always thought journalists should have some sort of a license, but the First Amendment really blocks any of that, because anybody can declare they're a journalist today and show up and say
Mhm.
whatever. And that's because of the First Amendment. But it's problematic because when you let anybody into the door of a profession and there are no standards,
Mm-hmm.
that's a problem. Like you see, like with lawyers and doctors, everybody else, to do hair cuttery, to do nails, you need a certificate on the wall. To do journalism, you just need to show up and start talking. And it's been
Well,
really problematic.
right. And they're not, this isn't just journalism. This is, if you're
I
giving
know.
financial advice, if you're like which said health advice, if you're giving law advice, if you're giving therapy, on relationships. Well, China is saying that you have to have some qualifications and certifications before you come talk to the Chinese people moving forward.
Well, it sounds to me like what they want there are standards. We'll see how high our standards are. In our country, there are no standards. Journalism has no rules whatsoever. I don't care what anybody says. I know individual news organizations claim to have best practice guides.
Mhm.
I've seen them, I've read them, I've been handed them. At the end of the day, there are no rules that they have to follow. Because of the First
Yeah.
Amendment and Time Sullivan, that's what it is. And I know this is not just a journalistic thing, but it does strike me as interesting because if you're holding it out for people who a country like China doesn't have any real journalism, okay? Because the government controls the information for the most part. But it does sound like something that would be great to have in the United States for journalists in particular, because everybody thinks they're an expert in things they're not an expert in. So no expertise other than going to a college class and then walking into somebody's newsroom. That's pretty much it. And I've met many of those journalists, and they are a
Yeah.
pain in the ass to deal with. So I get what China's channeling. Canada had related but not related. Canada is now taxing Facebook because Facebook's entire news model is to take other people's information and make money off of it. And this kind of sounds like, what happens when you do open the door to anybody and give anybody a microphone to do whatever they want and make money off your content. There does need to be some regulation. In our country, of course, the people who own our politicians and give them money are the same people that we're having this problem with right now.
Well, it seems like the check has a lot to say
Yeah,
about it. A lot.
I was going to say,
Go ahead,
I'm sorry,
say
go
it.
ahead.
Oh, no, you go
Well,
ahead.
Dr. Nicole says, she says, I think Lauren might agree with this. If they are speaking on specialized topics, i.e., mental health,
Right.
et cetera, then they should have credentials. We
Mhm.
cannot expect young folks to know the difference. Many grown folks don't. That's why they teach critical thinking in college.
That's right. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, and misinformation and disinformation is hugely dangerous. The other one of the things that's happening that is underwritten about is the danger and the impact of false information.
Right, yeah. And I think on a larger conversation, like technology, social media, the internet is fairly new. And, I've always been having a conversation, and just like we have the FCC, we
Yep.
need a hub within our government to regulate technology. I don't know if it gets folded under the FCC. I don't know if you create a whole new agency, but there needs to be regulations with how social media is governed and what they can and cannot do,
Right.
what these streaming platforms gouging. There has to be some type of systems and regulations for them, and as of now they're none. And I think
And
that's the larger conversation.
the AI piece alone should be regulated. Now we're doing, AI memes on Martin Luther King talking into the,
Yeah.
and of course, the King estate wasn't having that. The King estate sued their asses, and now they took a lot of that stuff down. But they shouldn't be able to do that. They shouldn't be able to misrepresent. We got a situation in Virginia with the election where the MAGA right has been running AI memes of candidates. Jay
Mhm.
Jones running for Attorney General, and Ghazala Hashmi, who's running for lieutenant governor. They ran an AI, a untrue, false AI character that looked exactly like them, saying a bunch of nonsense. And on one of them, they had the candidate shooting at police. I mean, it was like, are you kidding me? You can get away with this? To me, it's a form of defamation. Somebody should get sued. But that type of thing should be regulated. I can't believe that that's not regulated.
Right.
Well, Lauren, see, it just gets better with time, but time is up. We got to go. Lauren, you're amazing. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Neil, and all her great topics. See, Neil just does it all.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Isn't that what they say?
Well, folks, let's make the dream work again tomorrow and let it be known. We'll see you then.
Okay.